Hello, I'm Jashikins, and welcome back to another episode of Jash Reads. Today, we are continuing to read Eragon by Christopher Paolini. And I'm going to sip on some water before I start Chapter 3, Dragon Tales. And this will be showing my age, but I remember back when I was maybe 13 or 14 maybe. I might be getting the ages wrong, but there was a show called Dragon Tales. So I read the name of chapter 3 and I'm like I never really watched the show. I just saw commercials. So, but anyways, yeah, we're picking up Eragon again and we're reading chapter 3, Dragon Tales. Okay, let's get started. Let me get in my preferred theme position because I have a little stool so I don't become too cramped up while doing this, especially for long chapters like this. Okay, it's live, it's recording, so let's get on to chapter 3 of Eragon by Christopher Paolini. At dawn, the sun's rays streamed through the window, warming Eragon's face. Rubbing his eyes, he sat up on the edge of the bed. The pine floor was cold under his feet. He stretched his sore legs and rubbed his back, yawning. Beside the bed was a row of shelves covered with objects he had collected. There were twisted pieces of wood, odd bits of shells, rocks that had broken to reveal shiny interiors, and strips of dry grass tied into knots. His favorite item was a root so convoluted he never tired of looking at it. The rest of the room was bare, except for a small dresser and nightstand. He pulled on his boots and stared at the floor, thinking. This was a special day. It was near this very hour, 16 years ago, that his mother, Silena, had come to Carvajal alone and pregnant. She had been gone for 6 years, living in the cities. When she returned, she wore expensive clothes, and her hair was bound by a net of pearls. She had sought out her brother, Garrow, and asked to stay with him until the baby arrived. Within 5 months, her son was born. Everyone was shocked when Silena tearfully begged Garrow and Marine to raise him. Sorry, I mispronounced one name there. Let's go again with that sentence. Everyone was shocked when Silena tearfully begged Garrow and Marion to raise him. When they asked why, she only wept and said, "I must." Her pleas had grown increasingly desperate until they finally agreed. She named him Eragon, then departed early the next morning and never returned. Eragon still remembered how he had felt when Marion told him the story before she died. The realization that Garrow and Marion were not his real parents had disturbed him greatly. Things that had been permanent and unquestionable were suddenly thrown into doubt. Eventually, he had learned to live with it, but he always had a nagging suspicion that he had not been good enough for his mother. I'm sure there was a good reason for what she did. I only wish I knew what it was. One other thing bothered him. Who was his father? Silena had told no one, and whoever it might be had never come looking for Eragon. He wished that he knew who it was, if only to have a name. It would be nice to know his heritage. He sighed and went to the nightstand, where he splashed his face, shivering as the water ran down his neck. Refreshed, he retrieved the stone from under the bed and set it on a shelf. The morning light caressed it, throwing a warm shadow on the wall. He touched it one more time, then hurried to the kitchen, eager to see his family. Garrow and Rorian were already there, eating chicken. As Eragon greeted them, Rorian stood with a grin. Rorian was 2 years older than Eragon, muscular, sturdy, and careful with his movements. They could not have been closer even if they had been real brothers. Rorian smiled. "I'm glad you're back. How was the trip?" "Hard," replied Eragon. "Did Uncle tell you what happened?" He helped himself to a piece of chicken, which he devoured hungrily. "No," said Rorian, and the story was quickly told. At Rorian's insistence, Eragon left his food to show him the stone. This elicited a satisfactory amount of awe. But Rorian soon asked nervously, "Were you able to talk with Katrina?" "No, there was an opportunity after the argument with Sloane. But she'll expect you when the traders come. I gave the message to Horst. He will get it to her." "You told Horst?" said Rorian incredulously. "That was private. If I wanted everyone to know about it, I could have built a bonfire and used smoke signals to communicate. If Sloane finds out, he won't let me see her again." "Horst will be discreet," assured Eragon. "He won't let anyone fall prey to Sloane, least of all you." Rorian seemed unconvinced, but argued no more. They returned to their meals in the taciturn presence of Garrow. When the last bites were finished, all three went to work in the fields. The sun was cold and pale, providing little comfort. Under its watchful eye, the last of the barley was stored in the barn. Next they gathered prickly vine squash, then the rutabagas, beets, peas, turnips, and beans, which they packed into the root cellar. After hours of labor, they stretched their cramped muscles, pleased that the harvest was finished. The following days were spent pickling, salting, shelling, and preparing the day for winter. 9 days after Eragon's return, a vicious blizzard blew out of the mountains and sailed over the valley. Snow came down in great sheets, blanketing the countryside in white. They only dared leave the house for firewood and to feed the animals, for they feared getting lost in the howling wind and featureless landscape. They spent their time huddled over the stove as gusts rattled the heavy window shutters. Days later, the storm finally passed, revealing an alien world of soft white drifts. "I'm afraid the traders may not come this year, with conditions this bad," said Garrow. "They're late as it is. We'll give them a chance and wait before going to Carvajal. But if they don't show soon, we'll have to buy any spare supplies from the townspeople." His countenance was resigned. They grew anxious as the days crept by without sign of the traders. Talk was sparse, and depression hung over the house. On the 8th morning, Rorian walked to the road and confirmed that the traders had not yet passed. The day was spent readying for the trip into Carvajal, scourging with grim expressions for sellable items. That evening, out of desperation, Eragon checked the road again. He found deep ruts cut into the snow with numerous hoofprints between them. Elated, he ran back to the house whooping, bringing new life to their preparations. And there's a little time skip in the chapter, so I'm going to drink a little bit more water. Oh, yeah. Whew. Okay, you ready to continue, folks? I hope you are, because that's what we're doing. We're going to continue. 3, 2, 1, blast off! Woo! They packed their surplus produce into the wagon before sunrise. Garrow put the year's money in a leather pouch that he carefully fastened to his belt. Eragon set the wrapped stone between bags of grain so it would not roll when the wagon hit bumps. After a hasty breakfast, they harnessed the horses and cleared a path to the road. The traders' wagons had already broken the drifts, which sped their progress. By noon, they could see Carvajal. In daylight, it was a small, earthy village filled with shouts and laughter. The traders had made camp in an empty field on the outskirts of town. Groups of wagons, tents, and fires were randomly spread across it, spots of color against the snow. The troubadour's 4 tents were garishly decorated. A steady stream of people linked the camp to the village. Crowds churned around a line of bright tents and booths clogging the main street. Horses whinnied at the noise. The snow had been pounded flat, giving it a glassy surface. Elsewhere, bonfires had melted it. Roasted hazelnuts added a rich aroma to the smells wafting around them. Garrow parked the wagon and picketed the horses, then drew coins from his pouch. Get yourself some treats. Roran, do what you want. Only be at horse in time for supper. Eragon, bring that stone and come with me. Eragon grinned at Roran and pocketed the money, already planning how to spend it. Roran departed immediately with a determined expression on his face. Garrow led Eragon into the throng, shouldering his way through the bustle. Women were buying cloth, while nearby their husbands examined a new latch, hook, or tool. Children ran up and down the road, shrieking with excitement. Knives were displayed here, spices there, and pots were laid out in shiny rows next to leather harnesses. Eragon stared at the traders curiously. They seemed less prosperous than last year. Their children had a frightened, worried look, and their clothes were patched. The gaunt men carried swords and daggers with a new familiar. Ah, shit. Okay, let's start that again sentence again, and this time I will learn to speak correctly. The gaunt men carried swords and daggers with a new familiarity, and even the women had poniards belted at their waists. What could have happened to make them like this? And why are they so late? Wondered Eragon. He remembered the traders as being full of good cheer, but there was none of that now. Garrow pushed down the street, searching for Murlock, a trader who specialized in odd trinkets and pieces of jewelry. They found him behind a booth, displaying brooches to a group of women. As each new piece was revealed, exclamations of admiration followed. Eragon guessed that more than a few purses would soon be depleted. Murloc seemed to flourish and grow every time his wares were complimented. He wore a goatee, held himself with ease, and seemed to regard the rest of the world with slight contempt. The excited group prevented Garrow and Eragon from getting near the trader, so they sailed on his step and waited. As soon as Murloc was unoccupied, they hurried over. "And what might you sirs want to look at?" asked Murloc. "An amulet or trinket for a lady?" With a twirl he pulled out a delicately carved silver rose of excellent workmanship. The polished metal caught Eragon's attention, and he eyed it appreciatively. The trader continued. "Not even 3 crowns, though it has come all the way from the famed craftsmen of Bellatona." Garrow spoke in a quiet voice. "We aren't looking to buy, but to sell." Murloc immediately covered the rose and looked at them with new interest. "I see. Maybe, if this item is of any value, you would like to trade it for 1 or 2 of these exquisite pieces." He paused for a moment, while Eragon and his uncle stood uncomfortably, then continued. "You did bring the object of consideration?" "We have it, but we would rather show it to you elsewhere," said Garrow in a firm voice. Murloc raised an eyebrow, but spoke smoothly. "In that case, let me invite you to my tent." He gathered up his wares and gently laid them in an iron-bound chest, which he locked. Then he ushered them up the street and into the temporary camp. They wound between the wagons to a tent removed from the rest of the traders. It was crimson at the top and sable at the bottom, with thin triangles of colors stabbing into each other. Murloc untied the opening and swung the flap to one side. Small trinkets and strange pieces of furniture, such as a round bed and 3 seats carved from tree stumps, filled the tent. A gnarled dagger with a ruby in the pommel rested on a white cushion. Murloc closed the flap and turned to them. "Please, seat yourselves." When they had, he said, "Now show me why we are meeting in private." Eragon unwrapped the stone and set it between the 2 men. Murloc reached for it with a gleam in his eye, then stopped and asked, "May I?" When Garrow indicated his approval, Murloc picked it up. He put the stone in his lap and reached to one side for a thin box. Opened, it revealed a large set of copper scales, which he set on the ground. After weighing the stone, he scrutinized its surface under a jeweler's glass, tapped it gently with a wooden mallet, and drew the point of a tiny clear stone over it. He measured its length and diameter, then recorded the figures on a slate. He considered the results for a while. "Do you know what this is worth?" "No," admitted Garrow. His cheek twitched, and he shifted uncomfortably on the seat. Murloc grimaced. "Unfortunately, neither do I. But I can tell you this much. The white veins are the same material as the blue that surrounds them, only a different color. What that material might be, though, I haven't a clue. It's harder than any rock I have seen, harder even than diamond. Whoever shaped it used tools I have never seen. All magic. Also, it's hollow." What? Exclaimed Garrow. An irritated edge crept into Murlock's voice. Did you ever hear a rock sound like this? He grabbed the dagger from the cushion and slapped the stone with the flat of the blade. A pure note filled the air, then faded away smoothly. Eragon was alarmed, afraid that the stone had been damaged. Murlock tilted the stone toward them. You will find no scratches or blemishes where the dagger struck. I doubt I could do anything to harm this stone, even if I took a hammer to it. Garrow crossed his arms with a reserved expression. A wall of silence surrounded them. Eragon was puzzled. I knew that the stone appeared in the spine through magic. Made by magic? What for and why? He blurted, oh my god. But what is it worth? I can't tell you that, said Murlock in a pained voice. I am sure there are people who would pay dearly to have it, but none of them are in Carvajal. You would have to go to the southern cities to find a buyer. This is a curiosity for most people, not an item to spend money on when practical things are needed. Garrow stared at the tent ceiling, like a gambler calculating the odds. Will you buy it? The trader answered instantly. It's not worth the risk. I might be able to find a wealthy buyer during my spring travels, but I can't be certain. Even if I did, you wouldn't be paid until I return next year. No, you will have to find someone else to trade with. I am curious, however, why did you insist on talking to me in private? Eragon put the stone away before answering. Because he glanced at the man, wondering if he would explode like Sloane. I found this in the spine, and folks around here don't like that. Murlock gave him a startled look. Do you know why my fellow merchants and I were late this year? Eragon shook his head. Our wanderings have been dogged with misfortune. Chaos seems to rule Algasia. We could not avoid illness, attacks, and the most cursed bad luck. Because the Varden's attacks have increased, Galvatorix has forced cities to send more soldiers to the borders, men who are needed to combat the Urgals. The brutes have been migrating southeast toward the Hadaric Desert. No one knows why, and it wouldn't concern us, except that they're passing through populated areas. They've been spotted on roads and near cities. Worst of all are reports of a shade, though the stories are unconfirmed. Not many people survive such an encounter. Why haven't we heard any of this? Cried Eragon. Because Murlock. Dang it. What's reading? What are words? Okay, let's try that again, folks. Because, said Murlock grimly, it only began a few months ago. Whole villages have been forced to move because Urgals destroyed their fields and starvation threatens. Nonsense, growled Garrow. We haven't seen any Urgals. The only one around here has his horns mounted in Morn's tavern. Murlock arched an eyebrow. Maybe so. But this is a small village hidden by mountains. It's not surprising that you've escaped notice. However, I won't I wouldn't expect that to last. I only mention this because strange things are happening here as well, if you found such a stone in the spine. With that sobering statement, he bid them farewell with a bow and slight smile. Garrow headed back to Carvajal, with Eragon trailing behind. What do you think? Asked Eragon. I'm going to get more information before I make up my mind. Take the stone back to the wagon, then do what you want. I'll meet you for dinner at Horst's. Eragon dodged through the crowd and happily dashed back to the wagon. Trading would take his uncle hours, time that he planned to enjoy fully. He hid the stone under the bags, then set out into town with a cocky stride. He walked from one booth to another, evaluating the goods with a buyer's eye, despite his meager supply of coins. When he talked with the merchants, they confirmed what Murloc had said about the instability in Algasia. Over and over the message was repeated. Last year's security has deserted us. New dangers have appeared, and nothing is safe. Later in the day, he bought 3 sticks of mulled candy and a small, piping hot cherry pie. The hot food felt good after hours of standing in the snow. He licked the sticky syrup from his fingers regretfully, wishing for more, then sat on the edge of a porch and nibbled a piece of candy. 2 boys from Carvajal wrestled nearby, but he felt no inclination to join them. As the day descended into late afternoon, the traders took their business into people's homes. Eragon was impatient for evening, when the troubadours would come out to tell stories and perform tricks. Hang on, I'm going to sip on some water. Hang on. Okay. Let's continue. Eragon was impatient for evening, when the troubadours would come out to tell stories and perform tricks. He loved hearing about magic, gods, and, if they were especially lucky, the dragon riders. Carvajal had its own storyteller, Brahm, a friend of Eragon's. But his tales grew old over the years, whereas the troubadours always had new ones that he listened to eagerly. Eragon had just broken off an icicle from the underside of the porch when he spotted Sloane nearby. The butcher had not seen him, so Eragon ducked his head and bolted around a corner toward Morn's tavern. The inside was hot and filled with greasy smoke from sputtering tallow candles. The shiny black Urgle horns, their twisted span as great as his outstretched arms, were mounted over the door. The bar was low and long, with a stack of staves on one end for customers to carve. Morn tended the bar, his sleeves rolled up to his elbows. The bottom half of his face was short and mashed, as if he had rested his chin on a grinding wheel. People crowded solid oak tables and listened to 2 traders who had finished their business early and had come in for beer. Morn looked up from a mug he was cleaning. Eragon, good to see you. Where's your uncle? Buying, said Eragon with a shrug. He's going to be a while. And Roran, is he here? Asked Morn as he swiped the cloth through another mug. Yes, no sick animals to keep him back this year. Good, good. Eragon gestured at the two traders. Who are they? Grain buyers. They bought everyone's seed at ridiculously low prices. And now they're telling wild stories, expecting us to believe them. Eragon understood why Morn was so upset. People need that money. We can't get by without it. What kind of stories? Morn snorted. They say the Varden have formed a pact with the Urgles and are amassing an army to attack us. Supposedly, it's only through the grace of our king that we've been protected for so long. As if Galbatorix would care if we burned to the ground. Go listen to them. I have enough on my hands without explaining their lies. The first trader filled a chair with his enormous girth. His every movement caused it to protest loudly. There was no hint of hair on his face. His pudgy hands were baby smooth, and he had pouting lips that curled potently as he sipped from a flagon. The second man had a florid face. The skin around his jaw was dry and corpulent, filled with lumps of hard fat, like cold butter gone rancid. Contrasted with his neck and jowls, the rest of his body was unnaturally thin. The first trader vainly tried to pull back his expanding borders to fit within the chair. He said, "No, no, you don't understand. It is only through the king's unceasing efforts on your behalf that you are able to argue with us in safety. If he, in all his wisdom, were to withdraw that support, woe unto you." Someone hollered, "Right. Why don't you also tell us the riders have returned and you've each killed 100 elves? Do you think we're children to believe in your tales? We can take care of ourselves." The group chuckled. The trader started to reply when his thin companion intervened with a wave of his hand. Gaudy jewels flashed on his fingers. "You misunderstand. We know the Empire cannot care for each of us personally, as you may want, but it can keep Urgles and other abominations from overrunning this." He searched vaguely for the right term. "Place." The trader continued. "You're angry with the Empire for treating people unfairly. A legitimate concern. But a government cannot please everyone. There will inevitably be arguments and conflicts. However, the majority of us have nothing to complain about. Every country has some small group of malcontents who aren't satisfied with the balance of power." "Yeah," called the woman. "If you're willing to call the Varden small." The fat man sighed. Okay, let me say that sentence again. The fat man sighed. "We already explained that the Varden have no interest in helping you. That's only a falsehood perpetrated by the traitors in an attempt to disrupt the Empire and convince us that the real threat is inside, not outside our borders. All they want to do is overthrow the king and take possession of our land. They have spies everywhere as they prepare to invade. You never know who might be working for them." Eragon did not agree. The trader's words were smooth, and people were nodding. He stepped forward and said, "How do you know this? I can say that clouds are green, but that doesn't mean it's true. Prove you aren't lying. The two men glared at him while the villagers waited silently for the answer. The thin trader spoke first. He avoided Eragon's eyes. Aren't your children taught respect? Or do you let boys challenge men whenever they want to? The listeners fidgeted and stared at Eragon. Then a man said, "Answer the question." "It's only common sense," said the fat one, sweat beading on his upper lip. His reply riled the villagers, and the dispute resumed. Eragon returned to the bar with a sour taste in his mouth. He had never before met anyone who favored the Empire and tore down its enemies. There was a deep-seated hatred of the Empire in Carvajal, almost hereditary in nature. The Empire never helped them during harsh years when they nearly starved, and its tax collectors were heartless. He felt justified in disagreeing with the traders regarding the king's mercy, but he did speculate about the Varden. The Varden were a rebel group that constantly raided and attacked the Empire. It was a mystery who their leader was or who had formed them in the years following Galbatorix's rise to power over a century ago. The group had garnered much sympathy as they eluded Galbatorix's efforts to destroy them. Little was known about the Varden except that if you were a fugitive and had to hide, or if you hated the Empire, they would accept you. The only problem was finding them. Morn leaned over the bar and said, "Incredible, isn't it? They're worse than vultures circling a dying animal. It's going to be trouble if they stay much longer. For us or for them?" "Them," said Morn as angry voices filled the tavern. Eragon left when the argument threatened to become violent. The door thudded shut behind him, cutting off the voices. It was early evening, and the sun was sinking rapidly. The houses cast long shadows on the ground. As Eragon headed down the street, he noticed Rorian and Katrina standing in an alley. Rorian said something Eragon could not hear. Katrina looked down at her hands and answered in an undertone, then leaned up on her tiptoes and kissed him before darting away. Eragon trotted to Rorian and teased, "Having a good time?" Okay. Sorry, hang on, folks. This is not one of the better videos. I swear I do better videos on this channel. Oh, jeez. So many mistakes. Yes. Rorian seemed distracted. "What do you think of Sloane?" "I thought it was obvious. There'll be blood between us when he finds out about Katrina and me," stated Rorian. Snowflake landed on Eragon's nose, and he looked up. The sky had turned gray. He could think of nothing appropriate to say. Rorian was right. He clasped his cousin on the shoulder as they continued down the byway. Dinner at Horse was hearty. The room was full of conversation and laughter. Sweet cordials and heavy ales were consumed in copious amounts, adding to the boisterous atmosphere. When the plates were empty, Horse's guests left the house and strolled to the field where the traders were camped. A ring of poles topped with candles had been stuck into the ground around a large clearing. Bonfires blazed in the background, painting the ground with dancing shadows. The villagers slowly gathered around the circle and waited expectantly in the cold. The troubadours came tumbling out of their tents, dressed in tasseled clothing, followed by older and more stately minstrels. The minstrels provided music and narration as their younger counterparts acted out the stories. The first plays were pure entertainment, bawdy and full of jokes, pratfalls, and ridiculous characters. Later, however, when the candles sputtered in their sockets and everyone was drawn together into a tight circle, the old storyteller Brahm stepped forward. A knotted white beard rippled over his chest, and a long black cape was wrapped around his bent shoulders, obscuring his body. He spread his arms with hands that reached out like talons and recited thus. Okay, okay, before we hear this dragon tale, I'm going to drink a nice amount of water. And if you're watching, take a drink of water or whatever, and let's continue listening in a moment. Dum da dum da dum. Okay, let's do this shit. The sands of time cannot be stopped. Years pass whether we will them or not, but we can remember. What has been lost may yet live on in memories. That which you will hear is imperfect and fragmented, yet treasure it, for without you it does not exist. I give you now a memory that has been forgotten, hidden in the dreamy haze that lies behind us. His keen eyes inspected their interested faces. His gaze lingered on Eragon, last of all. Before your grandfathers' fathers were born, and ye, even before their fathers, the dragon riders were formed. To protect and guard was their mission, and for thousands of years they succeeded. Their prowess in battle was unmatched, for each had the strength of 10 men. They were immortal unless blade or poison took them. For good only were their powers used, and under their tutelage tall cities and towers were built out of the living stone. While they kept peace, the land flourished. It was a golden time. The elves were our allies, the dwarves our friends. Wealth flowed into our cities, and men prosper. But weep, for it could not last. Brom looked down silently. Infinite sadness resonated in his voice. Though no enemy could destroy them, they could not guard against themselves. And it came to pass at the height of their power that a boy, Galbatorix by name, was born in the province of Inselberth, which is no more. At 10 he was tested, as was the custom, and it was found that great power resided in him. The riders accepted him as their own. Through their training he passed, exceeding all others in skill. Gifted with a sharp mind and strong body, he quickly took his place among the riders' ranks. Some saw his abrupt rise as dangerous and warned the others. The riders had grown arrogant in their power and ignored caution. Alas, sorrow was conceived that day. So it was that soon after his training was finished, Galbatorix took a reckless trip with 2 friends. Far north they flew, night and day, and passed into the Urgol's remaining territory, foolishly thinking their new powers would protect them. There, on a thick sheet of ice, unmelted even in summer, they were ambushed in their sleep. Though his friends and their dragons were butchered and he suffered great wounds, Galbatorix slew his attackers. Tragically, during the fight, a stray arrow pierced his dragon's heart. Without the arts to save her, she died in his arms. Then were the seeds of madness planted. The storyteller clasped his hands and looked around slowly, shadows flickering across his worn face. Next words came like the mournful toll of a requiem. Alone, bereft of much of his strength, and half mad with loss, Galbatorix wandered without hope in that desolate land, seeking death. It did not come to him, though he threw himself without fear against any living thing. Urgles and other monsters soon fled from his haunted form. During this time, he came to realize that the riders might grant him another dragon. Driven by this thought, he began the arduous journey on foot back through the spine. Territory he had soared over effortlessly on a dragon's back now took him months to traverse. He could hunt with magic, but oftentimes he walked in places where animals did not travel. Thus, when his feet firmly left the mountains, he was close to death. A farmer found him collapsed in the mud and summoned the riders. Unconscious, he was taken to their holdings, and his body healed. He slept for 4 days. Upon awakening, he gave no sign of his fevered mind. When he was brought before a council convened to judge him, Galbatorix demanded another dragon. The desperation of the request revealed his dementia, and the council saw him for what he truly was. Denied his hope, Galbatorix, through the twisted mirror of his madness, came to believe it was the rider's fault his dragon had died. Night after night he brooded on that and formulated a plan to exact revenge. Ron's words dropped to a mesmerizing whisper. He found a sympathetic rider, and there his insidious words took root. By persistent reasoning, and the use of dark secrets learned from a shade, he inflamed the rider against their elders. Together they treacherously lured and killed an elder. When the foul deed was done, Galbatorix turned on his ally and slaughtered him without warning. The scream tore from his lips, and he fled into the night. As he was cunning in his madness, they could not find him. For years he hid in wastelands, like a hunted animal, always watching for pursuers. His atrocity was not forgotten, but over time, searches ceased. Then, through some ill fortune, he met a young rider, Morzan, strong of body, but weak of mind. Galbatorix convinced Morzan to leave a gate unbolted in the citadel Illyria, which is now called Eurobane. Through this gate, Galbatorix entered and stole a dragon hatchling. He and his new disciple hid themselves in an evil place where the riders dared not venture. There Morzan entered into a dark apprenticeship, learning secrets and forbidden magic that should never have been revealed. When his instruction was finished, and Galbatorix's black dragon, Shuriken, was fully grown, Galbatorix revealed himself to the world, with Morzan at his side. Together they fought any rider they met. With each kill their strength grew, 12 of the riders joined Galbatorix out of desire for power and revenge against perceived wrongs. Those 12, with Morzan, became the 13 forsworn. The riders were unprepared and fell beneath the onslaught. The elves, too, fought bitterly against Galbatorix, but they were overthrown and forced to flee to their secret places, from whence they come no more. Only Valriel, leader of the riders, could resist Galbatorix and the Forsworn. Ancient and wise, he struggled to save what he could and keep the remaining dragons from falling to his enemies. In the last battle, before the gates of Doru Araba, Valriel defeated Galbatorix, but hesitated with the final blow. Galbatorix seized the moment and smote him in the side. Grievously wounded, Valriel fled to Utgard Mountain, where he hoped to gather strength. But it was not to be, for Galbatorix found him. As they fought, Galbatorix kicked Valriel in the fork of his legs. With that underhanded blow, he gained dominance over Valriel and removed his head with a blazing sword. Then, as power rushed through his veins, Galbatorix anointed himself king over all Algasia. And from that day, he has ruled us. With the completion of the story, Brom shuffled away with the troubadours. Eragon thought he saw a tear shining on his cheek. People murmured quietly to each other as they departed. Garrow said to Eragon and Rorian, "Consider yourselves fortunate. I have heard this tale only twice in my life. The Empire knew that Brom had recited it when I lived to see a new month." And that's that chapter. Lovely, happy. Ah, God. Sorry about all the mistakes. I think I really do much better with shorter chapters. Next book in the series, I am just going to start releasing parts instead of chapters. So when there's long ass chapters like that, I'm not worn out and I can easily keep up the rhythm, keep the mistakes to a bare minimum. And the next chapter is actually really short, so that's a good thing for me. Now let's see the chapter after that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 9 not 9 chapters, 9 pages. Oh, jeez, sorry. I like to get myself prepared for, the future. So about that chapter, we learned some key plot points. First, something is going on in Algasia. Don't really know what, but we know it's stopped the traders from coming in when they wanted to. Urgles could be more likely to attack populated areas, like because the soldiers are being sent to somewhere else. We know about the Varden, who are the enemies of Galbatorix, and we know that whatever the heck Eragon has found is really, really odd. And we got to learn the history of how Galbatorix got into power. Of course, as the series goes on, we learn more and more about exactly what happened. There's some, well, the gist of things won't change. There will be more information as the series goes on that will clarify certain parts. And so that'll be fun. Okay, stretching on my knees, though the little stool helped me not get so cramped up. So yeah. I'm sorry, it was a long chapter, and I'm actually sort of tired now, so I'm sorry. Let's see. Let's finish the. Yeah, don't. Yeah, don't. It might be because this has just worn me out. No, no, hang on. I got something personal to talk about the chapter. Not personal, but something more than, hey, this happened and this happened. Yay! I do like the brother, the feelings between Rorian and Eragon. I like their brotherly relationship. And that does, and I like that about how Aragon is very comfortable with teasing Rorian, like, hey, I know what you were doing. So, and a question for this chapter. Let's see. Good question. Let's see. Good question. Let's see. Okay. Okay, like trying to figure out something cool and clever so people will actually comment. And let's go with this one. What do you think about the names of Galbatorix and Shuriken? Comment down below, let me know, and also let me know whatever else you thought about this chapter. The good, the bad, and the ugly, comment down below. But remember, no major spoilers. I'm sort of hoping that maybe some people get into the inheritance cycle via these videos, so there are some pretty big twists and turns that should not be ruined. If you would like to talk spoilers with me, if you are on the YouTube's link in the description to my Tumblr Ask Box, or you can discuss anything about the inheritance cycle with me. Let's see. Okay, that's one. And if you would like to buy your very own copy of Eragon by Christopher Polini, if you're on the YouTube's link in the description, if you're on my blog, link down below, and both links will take you to where you can buy your very own copy of Eragon by Christopher Polini. Now, I can understand why some of you might not want to buy via those links for various reasons, but if you do, you get your very own copy of Eragon by Christopher Polini. You help support Christopher Polini, and you help support both me and this blog. So, yay! And if you're on the YouTubes, please like this video if you are also sort of disappointed of going, oh shit, okay. I'm just stumbling along. This is not a good video. This is not the highlight. It's going to be really suck for me if someone views this video, like the first video they view of my channel, like, well, this sucks. We're never watching Jash reads again. It's like, ah, shit. So, like this video if you also agree I just stumbled along this chapter. Sorry. And also remember to subscribe. I will be reading the entire inheritance cycle, so you don't want to miss out on that, do ya? Also on this channel, I am doing a dramatic reading of the entire Animorphs series. So, two really good dramatic reading series that you don't want to miss a moment of, so please subscribe. And if you're on my bloggity blog and watching on the desktop version of my bloggity blog, please choose the follow by email option so you never again miss out on any of my lovely work. I just don't do dramatic readings. I also do full-length reviews, mini reviews, fan fictions, and a bunch of other stuff. And I know my really big long post is taking a while to get out. Sorry about that for one. But also, I am starting to work on a second long post that should take a shorter amount of time to get out. So at least there'll be, something new for those of you who enjoy me going on long-winded rants for my long post. So hopefully that can be completed in a week or two. So cross your fingers. And the next episode of my Eragon dramatic reading series will be next week, so stay tuned. You have a week to indulge in this video, and a new one will come out next week. And I am really going to rest my voice. So, until next video, goodbye.